Ted Williams' first year in organized baseball was played with the San Diego Padres in the old Pacific Coast League. After that, Eddie Collins of the Red Sox came to town and signed him to a contract, and in 1938, he went to spring training with high expectations. He had one thing going for him and one thing going against him as he went south that spring. Number one, he had all that talent. And number two, despite an admitted inferiority complex, he was very cocky.
I went to spring training. I got down there and I was there about, 10 days. And we were going over to Bradenton, and we were playing 2 games that day. One to Bradenton and one some other place. Our part was staying here and the others were going to Bradenton. And I made a point. I just went to Joe Cronin and I said, I remember riding home the first time and telling him how impressed I was with Grove. God, he's the smoothest thing I've ever seen. God, he was just a picture. He'd hump up, and he wasn't real fast then. He was getting 38, 37. And he looked pretty thrown. The prettiest left-hander I ever saw pitch. And I remember talking about how Jimmy Fox hit the ball. Geez, I was impressed with Fox. He was strong. You could put a gun and fire it and it'd sound like Fox hitting the ball. Boy, did they crack. Certainly cracked a hell of a lot different than mine did. And
kind of liked his muscles too, didn't you?
Yeah, sure. And of course, all the guys I thought were wonderful. They treated me great anyway. And I wrote home telling them about all the guys, and of course Joe Cronin. And of course Cronin wasn't as big a player as Fox and Grove, and But Joe was the manager, and he was important to me. But anyway, I remember after 10 days, I went over and I said, Joe, I said, where am I going? He said, well, look at the board. Look and see where you're going. He kind of chewed me a little bit. I said, okay, sport. So I just said sport. Sport would happen to be something I called everybody about that time. Just like you might say sport fans now, sport was the thing then, for me. That irritated me. And I think he wanted to put me in my place a little bit, too, because he felt like probably I was a little bit too cocky anyway for my own good. And they didn't have an idea in the world of keeping me unless I had a knockdown fence of that first year, which I wasn't about to do.
Ted Williams' greatest disappointment, his greatest failure, was the 1946 World Series, which the Red Sox lost to the Cardinals in 7 games. It turned out to be the only series he ever played in, and which, as the years went by, only compounded the pain. The public didn't know it, but he injured his elbow in an exhibition game before that series, and it was undoubtedly a factor, but he didn't use it as an excuse for his poor performance, and didn't with me. But for the 7 games, he hit only 200 and no home runs, and when it was over in St. Louis, he was devastated.
God, I never will forget after the 7th game of the World Series, damn it, here we lost it. And I couldn't believe that I'd been so lousy. I was kind of shell-shocked to think we'd lost, but I was so disappointed in myself. And I remember I went down to train that night. God, I've been reading these stories. I'm going to be traded for Newhouse. I'm going to be traded for DiMaggio. God, I was so completely upset. And I remember I went into my berth in my little compartment. And, I got in and I just broke down and started crying. Oh, geez, I was crying like that. And, I look out the window and it's a whole bunch of people watching me. I shut the shade down, And I guess that was around 6:30, 7 o'clock. And I just stayed in there and brewed. And, I was just, and everybody was just sick, It wouldn't hit me this hard now today if I was in a series, or the last 10 years of my career. But right then, it just hit me so hard. And I didn't even get out of my compartment until about 10 o'clock, 10:30, and I was hungry too. I finally went to the club car and I had dinner. And they could see that I was feeling terrible. And Cronin was trying to console me, and just about that time, Cronin was going to kill at Finnegan, Oh, he was really mad at Finnegan. They got in a hell of an argument. And Cronin was going to cut his throat. He was so goddamn. Oh, I don't know what happened. I wasn't there, except they had a hell of an argument about something. Finnegan had been writing a lot of shit about that time about everybody.
The things that stayed with Ted Williams that were disappointments that ate at him for the rest of his life were certainly the World Series of '46 when he did so poorly and the team lost, and then the missed chances for the repeat of a chance to get in the World Series in '48 and '49. But there was one more that affected the rest of his life in baseball.
The four biggest disappointing things in my career rank like this: losing the World Series, our second finishes in '48 and '49, but particularly the one in New York, because we had a lead going into that series.
That's
My
49.
second. The third is losing to Cleveland. And we not only lost the pennant that year in '49, but I lost out to Kell by 0.2%. He got 2 hits against Lemon and this. But the fact we lost was a big disappointment. 48 was the third biggest disappointment. And I must say, losing the MVP in '47 was also a big disappointment too, because I felt that but not as great. Those other three are my 3 big disappointments. Those are my 3 big disappointments. And I'll tell you my 4th biggest disappointment. And maybe it is the biggest disappointment of my career. It's the biggest disappointment of my career. You know what it is? When I broke my elbow. Because I knew after that I was never going to be the hitter I was before. I didn't know it at that time, but I knew it in '52. Because in '50 I struggled to see get started. 51 I hit .317, and I knew then that I was always going to have problems. 52, I was in the service. 53, I come back and hit pretty well. In 54, I had a pretty good year, I think. I don't remember. But I knew then that I was never going to be the hitter I was before.
The one consistent, persistent rap on Ted Williams by those that like to criticize him was that he wasn't that great an outfielder. But Ted, who understood the complaint, also understood that it might not have been totally warranted. He saw it differently.
I was a good, strong, average outfielder. I'll tell you where I was a good outfielder, regardless of what they say. In my heart, I played hitters better than a lot of guys. I never threw to the wrong base. Even though I'd boot a ball, very seldom did I drop a fly ball. But I made up for a hell of a lot of speed for playing good position. And that instinctive baseball something that I had, for example, if I could see a pitcher throw at a guy, and I could pretty much say, that son of a bitch can't pull this guy. Or if he's a little late, I'd immediately shift the step. Or if he was early, I'd say, pull this guy. Or the count was 2-2 and I could see him choking up or kind of shortening up or bending over where he's going to punch the ball. Those things I did. And a lot of guys never did. I remember a very, very distinct situation. I was playing in Yankee Stadium one time and Barrow was hitting. Now Barrow hit like this. Barrow was a hell of a hitter. Good, solid hitter. Son of a bitch, get the bat on the ball, and he might hit a home run, or he might squib one. But we were playing in Yankee Stadium one day, and I forget who was pitching. It was a pretty tough pitcher because I start shading Barrow towards left field. Got 1 strike, and I shade him. Christ, he got 2 strikes. Now I'm really shading him. And he hits a pop fly into left field, and I made a good play, but I got the ball right on the line. And I remember at the time, it was a long ball, fairly well hit, but late. And I remember the time he's running hard when I caught the ball, and I could still see him running because he thought it was going to be a base hit. So I was the first man up in the inning that inning, and he said to me, how the hell, he says, can you play me over there? See? Well, I must have been playing right. I got 12. See? Well, I got sick after that. It was in August probably. And I got on home, and I got one of them viruses in September, and I got laid on my ass, and I'm up there in the hotel room. We had a guy, now this must have been in the early 50s. This was in the early 50s. because we had a young kid called Stevens. He came up to our ball club, and he could run like a deer. If I could have had that boy's speed, I know my lifetime would have been at least 20 points higher. At least. Because he could run like hell. Never took advantage of it. He's not as good as he should have been. But he was the guy that was going to take my place when I left, but of course he didn't. So, I was up in the room and I was sick, and I'm laying there, you know, a couple men on. Bear is up the plate. And anyway, he hits a little ball into left field. Another one right down the line. Well, the way Kurt described the catch that Stevens made, it was the greatest catch that's ever been seen. I mean, he come out of nowhere and got on the line and got the ball, made a great play. Saved the inning, and Christ the cheers, and you know, you could hear it. I knew it had to be a hell of a play. But all I could keep thinking about, I bet that wouldn't have been any tougher play for me than him, because I'd have been playing him over this. Now, I could have been wrong. I don't know what the count was, but I remember the incident in New York, and then come back and hear this, and know that because probably the way I might have been playing, I probably could have got the same ball. Okay? Not everything equal, I would, because he was a lot faster.
And you had this instinctive way of playing.
Well, I think it wasn't as much instinct as just observation and putting it applying it. You know. Same way with a pitcher. I mean, you can see what a pitcher's going to do sometimes just by observation. Yeah, you can pretty tell what he's going to do. Just like I told you there. Guessing is no good for the guy that hasn't got something to go on. I'm using a little logic and a little bit of deduction in addition to saying, boom, this is the best way to go. This is just proper thinking. Not just guessing, proper thinking. It comes under the category of proper thinking.
The thing about Ted Williams, the great hitter, was that he never stopped looking for answers, better answers, to hitting. And frequently, whenever he had the chance and their paths crossed, he would seek out those answers from other great hitters of all time, including in Minneapolis, Rogers Hornsby.
Hell, I'd stay out every day. Hornsby'd like to stay out too. I don't know how old Hornsby was. He must have been 45, 47, maybe 50. He was around 50. And hell, I'd have a hitting contest with Hornsby, you know. Have a hitting contest. Base hits, home runs, you know. And that old bastard just keep hitting line drive. Didn't have quite the sting to him that mine did now, because I was, you know, a little younger and just.
This is after practice you did it.
Yeah.
After a game.
Yeah. No, after practice and everything. And we'd hit. He loved to do it, and I thought Hornsby was great. Very undiplomatic. He'd say something that would.
Give me an example.
Well. If he had a dislike about anything or anybody that, he wouldn't mind just saying, oh, he's horse shit, you know? I don't like that. He'd say, I don't like that. Or he'd, I can't remember anything specific.
Did he sting you a little bit?
No, he never did. In fact, we always seemed to get along pretty good. And I never did see him too much after that. But he never did criticize me in print, you know? Like Ty Cobb would say, you got to hit 450 if you go to left field. I'm trying to go to left field, but I'm having trouble going to left field. Or Al Simmons, when I hurt my elbow and I was having a hard time coming back, I hit 317 in 1951, but I was hitting terrible early part of the year because I just couldn't get started. He said, it's the end of Williams, you know. Never be a great hitter anymore. Well, I damn near wasn't a great hitter. But
Hornsby never did that.
No, Hornsby never criticized. He'd lay a blast once in a while to the modern players, you know, like I don't know. I remember the time in Minneapolis there, and this is in '38. I think DiMaggio was holding out. And he wanted $25,000, Joe DiMaggio. And he said, "Who the fuck do you think he is? He's only had 2 good years or something, you know." But it was that little, you know, he'd give a blast like that once in a while, you know. And, or he might blast anybody, but, you know, if something hit him just right, he'd say it. Or if the owner of the ball club kind of give him a little question about it, he might say, "What the hell do you know about it?" You know, I mean it.
Who was that?
Well, I don't know that he did this. I just say this is the type of guy he was.
Yeah.
See? And he always got in ringers by what he said. You know, always got in ringers. And he said, I mean, he'd say this, "Nobody's business what I do with my money," he said. "Nobody's business, you know." He said, "If I want to gamble, I can gamble." But the commissioner was on his ass for gambling, see?
Among other things, Ted Williams is known as the last of the 400 hitters because in 1941, he batted .406, and no one has even come close to that since, which means that in his lifetime, he could say that no one had done it except Ted Williams. He had a lot to say about it, both when he played and after the fact, because indeed it was a great achievement.
Then 41, of course, the only thing I can remember is, the things I can remember, of course, are DiMaggio's 56 streak and my 400. But me, personally, the 400 thing got bigger as the season went on, you know, because a lot of guys had hit 400 for 2 months. But then here's 3 and now here's 4. And, geez, I'm hitting 412, 413, you know? Wait, gosh, I'm hitting 400 plus, good.
Well, let me ask you something before you. I want to really dissect this season if we can. But had you done anything in the off season differently? Had you?
Not a thing, except that.
Were you stronger? Were you in better shape? I know you hurt your ankle, didn't you? At one point?
Not a thing. The thing of it is that I was getting more matured all the time, and I knew the pitching better all the time, and and then I always say the early part of the year, if I had one advantage that year, it was this, that I didn't play too much the early part of the season. Now, what did that mean? The early part of the season, it was cold in Boston. You'd have a lot of bad, adverse hitting winds. Nobody hits as good in cold weather as they do warm weather, especially in that up in Fenway, because the elements are against you.
Mm-hmm.
So I pinched hit a lot, man. I was getting hits all the time. So in about 2 weeks I hadn't played except pinch hitting once in a while. And about that time the weather started getting warmer and I got in the lineup, and in the meantime I was getting so damn much batting practice, the most batting practice I ever got in my life. I'll tell you who we got for Chapman. We got Joe Dobson, and Joe Dobson wasn't a pitcher in our club, and so he wasn't pitching regular, and Joe Dobson wanted to pitch too. And he had a hell of a good curveball, and he was tough for me because he had a real good overhand.
He was 46, wasn't he?
Yes, you're damn right. And he had a hell of a good overhand fastball and a good overhand curve. And so he wasn't playing regular, and I wasn't playing because of my ankle. And we'd have contests out there about 3 times a week, and he'd throw the shit out of the ball. And you know, it's always harder to get yourself geared up in practice than it is during a game. You know, in a game, you just naturally get geared up. But in practice, it's hard to gear yourself up. Well, we'd have a contest, and boy, he'd bearing down on me like a son of a bitch. And I was bearing
in the mornings, in the afternoon?
In the mornings or afternoon, depending.
Yeah. But every day?
Yeah, just every day that his arm would hold out. My blisters would hold out. I want to tell you, it helped him be a better pitcher. He always said that. And it sure as hell helped me be a better hitter, because I had a chance to do things, and for 2.5 weeks there, that, Jesus, the best batting practice I ever had. Well, God, I was sharp as hell, you know. Gosh, I'm really getting batting practice against hard. We'd play a regular game, you know. And he was tough just pretty naturally. He had a good, tough delivery.
What do you mean a regular game? What do you mean?
We'd play games where how many hits you get this inning and what inning, high score tonight.
Ted Williams came back from Korea and had great seasons despite his advancing years. He was pushing 40, in fact, when in 1957 he batted .388, just a few hits shy of hitting .400 again, won the batting championship, and won it again the following year. But then in 1959, he suffered through the only truly bad season of his professional life. For the only time, he batted less than .300 and was miserable the whole year. He'd been injured before that season started, but no one really knew about it. He knew, and he knew he wasn't up to what he'd been. And when the season was over, the owner of the team, Tom Yawkey, invited him into his office and suggested he retire.
I remember at the end of the year, Mr. Yawkey called me. And we start talking and talking. He used to drink in those years. Matter of fact, every time I ever went up to talk to him, my guys always ended up getting talking shit. I'd leave him, even though, he was an awful heavy drinker at that time. So he asked me, he said, what do you think you ought to do next year? And I come right back to him and I said, what do you think I ought to do? And he said, Ted, he said, I think you ought to quit. Like that.
Was it in his office or at home?
No, up in his apartment up at the Ritz-Carlton. He said, I think you ought to quit. He said, you've had a great career. And he said, you got hurt this year. And he said, I don't want to see you get hurt. He said, hell, he said, why don't you just, he said, hell, just wrap it up. Well, that kind of burnt my ass a little bit, because I knew I'd been hurt all year. I hit 355, 360, 388, 327, and then I hit 250. Perfect example of how a guy is hurt. I mean, I was in the hospital. I had a pinched nerve. I couldn't turn to the pitcher. I was absolutely miserable the whole year. And boy, that's the most miserable year I spent. I couldn't swing. Didn't want to swing. And there carried me. So I said, well, I tell you, I said, I'm going to wait till next spring to decide. Because I said, I still think I can hit. And I said, I'm going to wait till next spring. I said, if I feel I can't do it by spring, I said, hell, I'll let you know.
There was a side to Ted Williams that too often people missed, and that side was that he was a generous, caring, giving human being, and frequently gave to causes beyond just in money, but in time and effort. Probably his favorite, and the one that was most identified with Ted, was the Jimmy Fund out of Boston for kids with cancer.
How'd you get connected with the Jimmy Fund?
Well, the Jimmy Fund was something that actually I was connected with the Jimmy Fund before the Red Sox were connected with it. It was something that I was, somebody asked me to do, and I did it. We went to a damn old field. I forget where the hell it was, outside of Boston someplace. An old ballpark, and they had an old wrestling ring up there, and there was 4 wrestlers, and Frankie Fontaine was there that night. Who's been a great champion for the Jimmy Fund, and had done a hell of a lot for charity around the Boston area. And he was there that night, first time I ever met him. And this is in 1947. And then about that time, I think the Braves left for Boston 48 or 9, didn't they?
After the 48 season?
Yeah, 49. So in 49, the Boston Red Sox really picked it up. But they started to get in the act in 48, but really picked it up in 49. And the Braves left. Mr. Yawkey took the ball in because he realized that this was a pretty important thing, a real important thing. And that the ball club, the association between baseball and the Jimmy Fund was really established,
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure he liked that association. He also liked the fact that the Jimmy Fund, all about it. So this is what happened. Of course, the announcing and the players and the benefit games and all the rest of it.
Ted Williams won his last batting championship in 1958, a bargain, as he put it, when his average was only .328. But what made that interesting was that the batting championship race came down to the very last game, and the guy that he was neck and neck with was a teammate, Pete Runnels.
Runnels comes into the picture, and
How was the team that year?
He was the kind of hitter that have a great year and then a mediocre year, and then a hell of a year and then a mediocre. He could slap that ball around, had great bat control, and he was a pretty good little hitter. So he come to Boston. He hits ahead of me, second. And this year, sitting like hell, hits like hell. Had a hell of a year. And I'm riding his ass, all year long. And you always hear the theory that if you want something bad enough, you'll get it, Well, I want to tell you. I went into that last 2 weeks because we weren't in the pennant. I went into the last 2 weeks I said, I hope he wins the thing. But I'm not going to give it to him. I'm going to try to hit a little bit. I always tried to hit. So, we go into the last 3 days of the season. And finally go into the last day of the season, He's hitting 325 and I'm hitting 325. And I'm still going into the thing in my heart, telling you the truth, where I said, well, if he wins, I hope he wins it, it won't make a damn bit of difference to me, really. I was at that stage in my career and everything else. I certainly am glad I won it now, but at that time I really didn't care that much. Because, Reynolds had never won a batting championship, and he was a hell of a little hitter. He's a damn good hitter, Reynolds. Should have been a better hitter, but he was a damn good hitter.
Nellie Fox type, wasn't he?
He's a little more. He had more power than Nellie Fox, but on that order, Nellie Fox is I think Nellie Fox is a pretty good little ball player, boy. When you talk about Nellie Fox, boy, I talk about him in reverence a little bit. I think he was a son of a bitch of a little ball player. That son of a bitch is 5'7" and a little pint of piss, and you get him up in the ninth inning where you got to squeak a run out, he'll blunk one or boop one and might even hit one, That son of a bitch. I think he's a hell of a ball player. He was a hell. I'll take him. I'll take little Nellie Fox. I think he was a hell of a ball player. And this is a guy we can kind of exploit on a little bit, because I feel so strongly about Nellie Fox. I really do. So, you can take Bobby Richardson. You can take Phil Rizzuto. You take the little guys, And these are real giants among little guys, I think. So, they're real giants, even though a little guy. So, here we are at 325 the last day, and we're playing in Washington Sunday, and I always hit well in Washington. I could always see the ball good.
Well, after this time, you had a pretty good year. Did you feel good all year long? It was 60 points lower than you hit the year before.
It was kind of a little let down from the year before, and I think this is probably something that added to my feeling. What the heck,
Yeah.
And God, I never will forget the first time he got up. He had a line drive to right field. Or to left field, I think he hit it. And I had a line drive to right field, base hit. So we're still nip and tuck. I probably went a little bit ahead of him because I was up fewer times, probably. So, geez, the next time up, he hits one against the fence in right field. I get up there, and I think Ramos was pitching. I hit a line drive against the right field fence. So the next time I got up, Reynolds hits the ball to left center. Pretty damn good. And Severs made a hell of a play, keeping it from going into stands in the left center field bleachers in Washington. And God, I got up there, and he threw me a little changeup, and I saw it, and I hit it in the left field, right in the seats. Home run. Well, that completely broke Reynolds' back right there, And I end the season up beating. And I told Pete after the thing, I said, Pete, I wish you'd have won it more than me. I said, I didn't give you anything. I said, I was trying all the way, but I said I was pulling for you to win. And that's honestly the way I felt.
Ted Williams' last game and his very last time at bat have been talked about and written about for years since. It was indeed a memorable game and a memorable time at bat, and Ted could recall every detail.
The thing I remember is the first time I got up, of course, this left-hander's got pretty good stuff, but he's This day here, he can't get the ball over. He walked the first guy or the second guy, and then he walked me, and then he got in trouble with the next hitter and pulled him out. And it was a day that all he had to do is get the ball over, because it was one of those days that, you know, in Fenway it was dark and dreary and the wind blowing in, and, you know, it was a dreary day that, you know, that's the kind of day just get the ball over and make him hit. But he was getting in trouble walking. And so they got him out of there and brought Fisher in.
Well, second time up you batted against Fisher.
Yeah, and I hit a ball pretty good to right center. It was blue-black.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was hit good enough a lot of days to go out, and it didn't go out. And then I hit another one the next time up far in the right field. It was an out, too, you know. The one I hit better than the other, and I thought, geez, if that don't go out, you know, I mean, I hit that one real good, and pretty damn good, and it didn't go. And so, I mean, I didn't think, I mean, I just about given up that I was, you know, I wasn't going to get any home run.
Yeah, one of the players said that's what you said when you came back in. He said, geez, if that one didn't go out, none's going out today. You remember saying that?
Yeah, I think so. I remember I first pitched him, it was a ball, and he just threw a hard, you know, tried to throw a fastball, and he got the pitch, boom, right in there again, a ball too. And then, you know, he looked like he was going to try to fire the ball by me, you know. I knew damn well he was going to just try to pump the ball in there, you know, and I had a ball I should have hit a mile, and I missed the son of a bitch. Now, I don't miss, completely miss. And I missed that ball, and I don't know yet how I missed it. And I thought, holy Christ. You know, how the hell he missed that ball? And then he couldn't wait to throw the next one, same way, you know. I think he thought he threw it by me, see? Maybe he did throw it by me, I don't know. But I don't know why I didn't hit that ball. And the next one was right in there, and I was a little quicker. Chances are he did throw the first one by me a little bit, because the next time I tried to be a little quicker, you know, and I hit that one. And I hit a little bit better than I hit either one of those other balls. Even though I hit the others good, you know, pretty damn good. This one here had that little extra on it, you know, and sure enough, I just fought that wind, just kept going, and we got in there. And but that had to be one of my, you know, I was really thrilled about hitting that ball, because the last time up, you know, and the crowd, I never saw a percentage of people react as boisterous or as I don't know, I haven't got the words to say, but they really put it on that day, you know. And so I remember
It wasn't a real big crowd, but it was big enough to make
I think
a
it
lot
was 10, 11,000.
Yeah.
And so I came around, and I mean, they just stood and raised hell, you know. They cheered like hell. And then I got in the dugout, and most of the time, or a lot of times, I hit a home run, I just go right down to the dungeon, you know, get a drink of water. And this time here, I did the same thing. I went down in the dugout, and a lot of the players were pleading for me to come on up. You know, a lot of them said, "Christ, give me your hat," and I wouldn't even listen to it. And if I'm not mistaken, I think even Higgins come down. And, you know, like when Mays hit his 500, you know, well...
You weren't tempted at all?
No, not a bit. So, they just kept clapping and clapping and clapping, and the umpires are kind of looking towards the dugout, kind of a half-ass appealing, you know. Is that in his story?
Yeah.
Because they did. Everybody stopped. And, my God, I just wouldn't do it. And they're just standing, they're just, you know... So,
but it had to make you feel great, huh?
Well,
Inside?
I felt great, because not only the fans, because I told you my feeling for the fans had changed about 5 years before, to a point where I felt like, you know, that the Boston fans were really with me. And
well, feeling that way and knowing you felt that way, why didn't you tip your hat?
Well, it was just something I just couldn't do, because I don't know, maybe those 5 years didn't offset 15, see? 14. I just couldn't do it. So, and I think if it happened today, I wouldn't do it. Just couldn't do it, you know.